For number 19, it's asking us to find x and y intercepts. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is my y-intercept. Remember that y-intercepts are when x is 0. So I'm going to go through and just plug in 0 for my x. Remember that f of x is the same thing as y, okay? So I'm going to rewrite this problem, but instead of x, I'm going to plug in 0. So we have y is equal to 3, 0 squared, which is 0, plus 3, 0, which is 0, plus 1. So we get a 1 here. And intercepts are always points. So this is the point 0, 1. Perfect. And now we're going to do x-intercepts. X-intercepts are when y is equal to 0. So we're going to take this y right here and set it equal to 0. And then write the rest of the problem, okay? Now from here, we see that our a is not 1, which means we have to do the slide, divide, simplify, bottoms up, okay? So if we were to take this over here, we move it by multiplication, this 3. So we have 0 is equal to, move the 3, so that leaves us with x squared plus 3x. And now instead of plus 1, we actually have plus 3. So now because our a is an imaginary 1, we can regularly factor, right? Where we write our little parentheses like this. We want to know what adds to give us positive 3 and multiplies to give us 3. If you don't know, you can make a multiplication chart with your multiplication number, which is 3. And the only thing that multiplies would be a 1 and a 3. And those don't add to give us, 3. So here you can write that you cannot factor it if you want, or you can go for the extra credit, okay? So for the extra credit, to be able to solve the ones that don't factor, we have to use the quadratic formula, okay? So our quadratic formula is x is equal negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Make sure that you put the negative b plus minus under the, or that you put the line under everything, okay? All over 2a, okay? So now I'm gonna go back before I did my whole slide divide. Yeah, you don't wanna start down here. You need to start before you did the slide divide. So we actually have 0 is equal to 3x squared plus 3x plus 1. So now I'm gonna label what we have. So my a here is 3, my b is 3, oops, I wrote a again. My b is 3, and my c is 1. So essentially, I'm just going to plug it into my quadratic formula. Remember, whenever you're plugging in, you always need to use parentheses. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through and just write parentheses. So x is equal negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and then go back and plug it in. So this first one's supposed to be b is 3, this one's b squared, ac 3, 1 all over 2a, and then we can simplify from here. How I would solve these problems is I would take the stuff underneath the radical and plug it into your calculator. You do not put the square root in your calculator, just the stuff underneath. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So with your calculator, you would hit 3 squared and then minus 4 times 3 times 1. Or, so that gives you negative 3. Or you could do it exactly how you have it written. You could do negative 4 and use the parentheses and say 3 close parentheses 1. You might have to put multiplication between there. Oh, nope, it worked. So we get negative 3. If you do this and you get like an error or something, you might have to go back and add like multiplication numbers, okay? So it just depends on what calculator you're using. But okay, so underneath the radical, we have negative 3. So I'm going to go ahead and just simplify this stuff a little bit. So this right here is going to be negative 3. Bring down that plus minus. And now we know underneath the radical is negative 3 because of our calculator, okay? And then this is all being divided by 2 times 3, which is 6. Okay? From here, remember whenever you have a negative on the inside of your radical, that means it's imaginary, so it has to come out as an I. So what we're going to do is rewrite this plus or minus, and then we're going to leave the 3 under there. We're going to get rid of this negative and then put an I on the outside of your radical, and then divide this by 6. Okay, so this right here would be the final answer. One thing that's really important is that you know how to simplify properly. It looks like you could divide each of these parts. Remember, pluses and minuses separate your parts, right? So there's a part here on top, there's 2 parts on top and 1 part on the bottom. It looks like you can divide all of them by 3, but whenever it's underneath a radical, you cannot touch it, okay? So if it's underneath the radical, don't touch it. So this part right here does not share anything with this over here, okay? Just to give you guys an example, a mini example of that, let's say it said 2 plus or minus 8 square root of 2 divided by 6, okay? So again, we have 3 parts. We have the 2, we have the 8 square roots of 2, and the 6, okay? You leave this square root of 2 alone. You cannot touch it, but you can look at everything else. So we have a 2, an 8, and a 6, and each of these can be divided by 2. So you only divide the numbers on the outside by what they share, okay? So if we do that, 2 divided by 2 is 1, plus or minus 8 divided by 2 is 4. We leave the radical, we cannot touch it, and then on the bottom we have a 3 for the final answer. So that is how you would simplify it, okay?